Hello and welcome to episode 6 or 9 or something of AWS on Stack Overflow. My name is John Rotenstein. I am a developer advocate at AWS. We used to call them technical evangelists, but now we are called developer advocates. Hey Jelly, good to see you on there, Chinchi. And I like to answer lots of questions on Stack Overflow, just like Jelly here in the chat. And so I have a stream where we get to answer some questions, have a general chat together, talk about things Stack Overflow, and sometimes things that are not Stack Overflow. So I'd be interested in hearing from you folks. Where are you all from? What do you do on Stack Overflow? What brings you here? So thanks for joining in. It's interactive, so happy to respond to chats that you might have. I was trying to find a good title screen to use when I jump into this show. And so I just called up the image search on Google to say Stack Overflow. And there's a bit of history on this page. You might see this thing called Stack Overflow documentation. This was an attempt, it's now a little bit defunct, an attempt by Stack Overflow to say, hey, documentation is wrong. Rather than reading heaps and heaps of documentation, why can't we do something where people can contribute documentation? It should be based around code. So if you want to talk about S3 buckets, don't describe what an S3 bucket is. Say, here's some code to list my S3 buckets. Here's some code to put things in S3 buckets. Unfortunately, it didn't take off that well, and so I think Stack Overflow documentation is no more, which is a bit of a shame. There's also Stack Overflow careers. So Stack Overflow makes a fair bit of money out of ads on Stack Overflow, so they should. It's in the top 40 sites on the internet. And the great thing is they can post careers jobs targeted at people who have certain skills. So if you answer lots of questions on Python, then they can target job ads directly at Python people. So it's sort of like pre-qualifying people to see who they should be going. So if you want to advertise, advertising on Stack Overflow is great. I've even received some people pinging me and saying, oh, I'm from Stack Overflow. The system itself says, we think you would be good for this particular role. So by all means, jump in there. Any of you ever got a job through Stack Overflow? Let me know. Say hi in chat. Actually, the logo has also changed a bit over time. I was looking at this and seeing a bit of an older logo. When they changed the logo a number of years ago, they put out this cute little animated video. And they were trying to explain the genesis of the new logo. Don't be too afraid. It's not that different. It's very similar. So, of course, they got what I presume is a unicorn. But I don't think it's got a spike on its head. So I'm not sure what sort of animal that is. And here is the logo that they had at the time. And this almost unicorn looked at it and thought, not quite the logo that we want. So decided to make a few changes. Let's make it a bit more springy. Let's orangeify the logo. It's amazing how some people take logo changes to heart and they get really upset if their favorite logo is changed. So this logo is almost perfect. Almost perfect. What's our friend going to do here? Maybe take one off, and what can you do with it? Unicorn time, yay! So, quite nice. That's why unicorns have orange spikes on their head. Thanks very much, unicorn fellow there. So, bit of history there of Stack Overflow. So, do any of you answer questions on Stack Overflow, ask questions, land on Stack Overflow? How to use Stack Overflow? Let me know in chat. So, the whole idea of this show is we can be a community and we can do lots of Stack Overflow and AWS related things together. Mr. Bob, the stack became less overflowing. Yeah, we always have too much to do, don't we? And reducing the size of the stack might be help. I thought I'd also point out this thing. This is a survey that Stack Overflow puts out each year, and it's answered by 65,000 developers, obviously ones who tend to land on Stack Overflow. And it has a whole lot of interesting information to do with developers. And I bookmarked a few interesting questions in here. This is an interesting one. Oops. What do you do when you get stuck? We asked respondents what they do when they get stuck on a problem. Almost 90% have responded they visit Stack Overflow. Well, it's pretty obvious because it was asked to Stack Overflow people. So, hey, But it's interesting. People visit Stack Overflow, they do other work and come back later. I often do this I often describe programming as bashing through a successive series of brick walls. It's like you do this, oh, yay, I fixed it. And then you've got another thing that's not working, and you've got to try and bash through that problem as well. So Google takes me there, Arknot. Yeah, Google is a great way to fix things. I think, what have they got? Do a visit another community. So some people do work, come back later, watch videos. I remember I had a person in a company for doing work experience, and they had a bit of time. So I said, let's learn Python. And so we went off, and how did he learn Python? He went and watched a video on YouTube. Whereas the way I learned Python was I went off and I read the documentation. So different people have different ways of learning. I love the fact you can paste part of a stack and find the solution immediately. You can paste part of a stack in Google, there's Arknot, and get a solution. I guess it's going to match on whatever pages tend to have a lot of that code. I've not tried pasting code in. Let's try something. Here I happen to have a lot of code things I'm working on. Let's make that bigger. Let's find a Cloudformation template. Let's say I'm interested in making a role. Yeah, so what would happen if I took that role and I did a Google search with all that code? And well, quite obviously it comes up with IAM role. That was the big thing I put on top. Manage policies, Lambda execution role. Yeah, it's pretty good at matching there. So looks like Google is a good way of doing it. You slice it to exclude system-specific paths. It'll do a good job of finding matches. That's handy. Talk to a coworker or a friend. I always like to say the best way to learn to program is to bring a friend, because if they've done it before, or you can discuss it. Have you ever heard of rubber ducking? Yes. Rubber duck debugging. This is where if you are having a problem with your programming, hey duck. If you have a problem with your programming, you go and talk to a friend about it, or a duck, and you can just explain to your duck, I've got this problem. I'm trying to initialize these variables and I'm allocating the memory, and that's right, I had the wrong pointer type. And you can often solve the problems by talking to other people and explaining it. And it's also known as Teddybear Debugging. I use DuckDuckGo. Does that count? It's not quite DuckDuckGo. Roduck Teddybear Programming. My teddy bear helps me debug some application. I tell him my issues, things like that. So the famous story is there was some university somewhere in the world, and a lot of students used to go to the IT counter and ask about their problems. And while they were explaining their problems, they'd often go, that's right, I forgot to declare that variable. And they'd go off and do it. So they put a teddy bear on the counter. And if you had a problem, you first of all had to describe your problem to the teddy bear, and if the teddy bear didn't give you the answer, then they would talk to you and help you further. So pair programming is really great. Talking about pair programming, I always like to show pair on. This was a chair created by an Australian software firm for an April Fool's joke. It's called a pair on chair, the idea that when you're doing pair programming, you can sit together. And there is a great video here. Let's see, again for an April Fool's, Atlassian, a great Australian software company, came out with this video. I will put a link to it in the chat. And it's basically an April Fool's joke about pair programming and how you spoon. So we all know about forking code. This is about spooning in your pair programming work. I'll let you watch it on your own in case it's not quite safe for work here. Oh, that was another great April Fool's joke they had, where it was a bit band, something you wear on your hand, and it can measure how many lines of code you write. So really neat. Go for a walk, play games. That's the Twitch crowd. I might show you my favorite game after. Panic. I think people are lying there. Panic should be a lot higher. Some other interesting questions they had in here. Tools. When researching new tools, over 3/4 of respondents like to try the tool for themselves via a free trial. Social proof is important. 60% of developers ask other people or visit Stack Overflow. So how do people research their tools? They try a free trial. They ask developers, visit Stack Overflow, read reviews. Not many research companies that have emailed me. Yeah. I always like to say that when I'm researching a tool, I always like to read the documentation, because the documentation doesn't lie. Marketing stuff can say whatever it wants, but the documentation actually has to talk about the product. So reading the documentation is great. Having a play around with it is important. Much easier now. You've got things in the cloud. And having a free trial is great. So how does AWS score on that? All our documentation is public. You can just go to the AWS documentation site if it comes up. For the free trial, you can go to the AWS free tier, which offers some services, certain amount of services each month for free in your first year, and some services thereafter. And a free trial, documentation, yeah. So you can do lots of that yourself there as well. And what else was interesting in this poll? The most loved, dreaded, and wanted languages. We've chatted about this before on the stream. The most loved, Rust. What is Rust? Do you use Rust? Do you enjoy using Rust? TypeScript is very new, very popular these days. Python, yay! Kotlin, Julia. Quite obviously, these loved languages are ones that very few people use. Perl, I love Perl. I call Perl a write-only language because you can write your code and the next day you can't even read it and figure out what it's doing. Mr. Bob wants a project to use Rust for. So you want to use the language, and secondly, you want to find a project to do it with. It's a bit backwards. So that's loved. Dreaded. What do people hate? Visual Basic. Oh no, VBA. That's Visual Basic in Microsoft Office applications, I think. Objective-C, that's for the Mac, I think. So people haven't liked Perl. Good call. C. So my son is doing a university course learning programming, and they're making him do C. I don't know why. It's all these pointers and memory things, and it's really, really hard. But I guess once you conquer C, you can conquer anything. So people don't like a lot of the languages that were in the love list are also in the dread list. Rust down there. But wanted. This is the biggie. Developers who are not developing with a language or technology, but have expressed interest in developing with it. So the majority of the languages seems to be Python. Objective-C is the worst language I've used, says Mr. Bob. You can do Swift now. What did I just see? I saw something with Swift and AWS. Oh, that's right, Lambda. Somebody has a library where you can use Swift with Lambda. So Swift is the language that Apple now does for a lot of developing on their iOS, macOS, and watch applications. It's pretty good. JavaScript, Go, and VBA, the most dreaded. Some people want to learn. Hey, let's take us through everything. And since we're on the topic, I had another link here that I wanted to show. We mentioned this a while back. This is a poll from Reddit, and they said, how do you like to pronounce AMI? So at least from Reddit users, AMI is pronounced AMI, not Army. Thank you very much, Reddit. Okay, so for those of you who just joined, my name is John Rotenstein. You can find details of me via these links. And I'm a developer advocate. What does a developer advocate do? We advocate AWS to developers, and we also advocate developers back to AWS. So if a developer is having a problem or something isn't working or they'd like to give feedback to a product team, they can also contact us and we will channel that feedback back to product managers. Product managers love to hear from customers. The famous quote is that 90% of AWS services and features come from customer requests. And the other 10% is where we come up with some great ideas that customers might not have thought of yet. But we love having the customer feedback there. So I get to answer lots of questions online. From my shirt, you can see I used to work for AWS training and certification. So I would teach training courses to AWS customers. And I used to like it because a company would send their people and they'd start the class going, I've been sent to this class. Why do I want to learn about the cloud? And by the end of it, they go, oh, this AWS stuff's pretty neat. Can you show me how to do it? So we're mostly here to answer some Stack Overflow questions. Have you ever landed on Stack Overflow. Who's ever done a bit of a Google search and let's say you are searching for IAM policy deny public access or something in AWS. And so what do you get here? You get some links to documentation. Where's Stack Overflow? Here's some Stack Overflow. So you'll often land on these things, and Stack Overflow is great because it says, hey, here's my particular problem. It's a question and answer site. And then it says, hey, here's the answers that might be suitable for your problem. Ironically, I just found my own answer from about 4 years ago. Nicely formatted answer, if I say so myself. And it also has the ability to add comments on there. So the general rule is if you are going to reply to a question like this one, your answer should be fully self-contained and say, here is the answer to your problem. If you need to ask further questions to clarify things, then you can ask additional questions like, how is my user accessing the bucket? Once you've got that clarification, you can then publish an answer. And in this case, there's actually 3 answers. Let's go down and have a look here. Somebody posted an answer and deleted it. It was interesting. Maybe they felt the answer was not suitable. And somebody else had an answer. That's interesting. Oh, this was deleted by a moderator. This little diamond indicates a moderator on Stack Overflow. They have the ability to delete and care for things. And it looks like it's because it doesn't provide an answer. Exactly. They're asking a question here, and a question should not be an answer. That should be moved to a comment. So there are 3 answers, but it looks like 1 answer survived it. The other thing to notice is answers can get upvotes and downvotes. If you upvote, it is a way of saying the answer is useful. If you downvote, it's saying it's not useful. This little tick symbol indicates that the answer was accepted, which means the person who asked the question said, yep, that answered my need. As a result of answering and getting those ticks, you can get reputation. And reputation is people in the Stack Overflow community saying, we think you're wonderful. And here you can see I've got some points. You get 15 points for getting that up arrow tick. You get 10. So this arrow is 15 points. The upvote is 10 points. So you'll see some here that get 25. It's the combination of somebody upvoting and ticking. Here I've lost 15 points. Let's have a look at this one. This was just a few days ago. I remember this question. Somebody is using Amazon S3 Select. Great service. S3 Select allows you to run effectively SQL over a file in an object in S3 without having to download the object. So let's say you have a several meg file, gigabyte file or something, and you just want to select a bit of information out of that, and it's in a CSV format or something that's navigable like a Parquet format or ORC. You can run an SQL command in S3 and it will return that particular row. So no need to download and process, you can do it yourself. And this person was saying, can I run it on a specific version of an object? If you recall in S3, anyone use versioning out there? Versioning is where you can say, if this object gets deleted, then keep a copy of it, and it sort of keeps an archive copy of every previous version that's out there. And so down here, my response was that the select object content command does not support it. So let's cover a few topics here. Anyone out there ever used S3 Select? One of these hidden features. Do I have CSV file? Let's create a CSV file. I might have something name and let's say ID and name. So ID 1 is John, ID 2 is Arknot, ID 3 is Mr. Bob. Sounds fascinating. How do you denote a section of a file in S3? So it can work typically off CSV files, or it can work off Parquet. And let's give you an example. So if I save this file, 2.csv, and if I upload it to S3, .csv, load. So I then select the file in S3, come into management, keep Too many things in S3 these days. Too many things. I've got to click into the file. And then I can say select from. So let's have a look at this. I can say it's a light version of Athena. Yeah, that's a good description of it. Athena works by running Presto behind the scenes across lots of files in S3, but S3 select only works on one file at a time. Mr. Bob recently made a Go program that runs S3 select on many log files. So you're Athenaizing S3 select. That's neat. It processes the data and aggregates into something useful. Or you could just use Athena. It's up to you. So I say this is a CSV file. It is comma delimited or whatever delimited. Yes, it has a header row. And I hit a button and it brings me a preview of the file, which is neat. And then I can say, great, here's an SQL selection. So I can say, let's bump that up. Select star from the object. And it returns those things. And then I could say select star from object where ID equals 2. It's because the columns haven't been defined. I think I've got to do it like this. Select column 1 and column 2 from there. Very good. Some headers are missing from the file. Okay, what am I doing wrong? It has a header row. s.id, you think I should use s.id. I love pair programming across the internet. I love you all. So select star from S where s.id equals 2. Why am I doing this? You folks could just do this for me. What am I doing wrong? Unexpected keyword. Where? Of course there's going to be where. S dot. That's weird. Two in quote. It's a string. I like that idea. That ID might be equal to. No. Let's go back to selecting star from that. Maybe I've got to put on one line. Where s.id equals 2. No result. We're getting closer here. Why do I have to be on one line? Weird. My headers are missing from the file. This is embarrassing me. ID name. You don't provide it with single. This is SQL. I've done so many programming languages lately that. Thanks for that, Fat Daddy. Yay, pair programming wins. Yay. So, quick rehash. Now, does it work if I put that on 2 lines? No, that's interesting. So it wants to be on one line and it wants single quotes because in SQL, a double quote is a way of referring to a column name which can include some funny characters, uppercase, lowercase, and all that. So fantastic. Hello to all of you folks who are cheering along my coding. Mushy, Jelly, AEM. So as we've seen, S3 select can go through a really, really big file. It can also be compressed. So you can provide a gzipped file, which CSV crunches down really well, like to 10% of the size. So you can give a zip file really big on S3, run the command. You can do it through the console. And as Mr. Bob said, you can also do it through the CLI. What's up, Ninja Shifter? Good to see you on there. Poor News, back again. Good to see you back there. We are bumbling our way through S3 Select. Why are we bumbling our way through S3 Select? We had this question. That's right. It has this command called select object content. So if I go to the Boto documentation, because I'm a Python person, and I can do that. Select object content. Here we are. This operation filters the contents of an S3 file based on SQL, blah, blah, blah. And when you pass it in, you tell it which bucket, which object via key, encryption if you need it, and you pass the SQL, of course. But one thing that isn't here, auto output, fields delimiters JSON. You can scan a range, so you can say, look from this line to that line. That's pretty neat. One thing you cannot do here is select a version of an object. So the question over here was, how can I run S3 select on a particular version of an object? And my answer was, sorry, you can't, because the API doesn't take it. But they came back 5 hours ago, apparently, and said, based on the AWS SDK Git channel, put custom query parameter on the request can pass a version ID, which is really neat. The AWS SDK Git channel. I've never heard of that. Does Git do chatting and everything? Git channel. I don't understand. Is there a Git chat channel I'm not aware of? AWS SDK Git channel. Have a look at that sometime. Gitter, it might be. I saw Gitter recently. Gitter AWS SDK. So Gitter is a sort of online chat place on various developer topics. So you're right. It might be one of these things that they found it in. Now, Poor Noobs is saying a shared. This is out, is it? Thanks, Poor Noobs. Let's have a look at this. Always read your AWS blog because you might like what sort of comes out of it here. So, I was aware of this for a while. Yes, it is the thing I was aware of for a while. Happy to announce that Lambda functions can now mount an EFS file system. So EFS is like a NAS. Within AWS, you can create mount points in multiple subnets within your VPC. You can then mount onto a Linux instance, not Windows, Linux only. It's a shared file system, so systems can share. A lot of people say, how do I run two servers with the same files locally? You can use EFS for that. The nice thing here that Lambda is now allowing you to mount EFS. What's the biggest problem that people have with Lambda? Well, the 15-minute limit, but if you're taking longer than 15 minutes, shouldn't use Lambda. The second biggest problem is Lambda functions normally only give 512 meg of storage in the /temp directory, and you can't store more than that. And so this means you could mount an EFS file system. You could have multiple Lambda functions instantiated. They would all share the same disk so they can read it. So if you've got lots of data that you normally download at the start of a Lambda function, no more. You could just mount EFS. I think you can specify it as part of Lambda. And did I say 5 or 500? 512 meg of storage in the temp Lambda storage area. And 512 meg in temp. Yep, that's cool. So this now lets you have it. What else are they saying here? You can share the same EFS with other containers like EFS, ECS, and Fargate. That's great. Yep, processing things larger than /temp, 512 meg. Loading the most updated version of files that change frequently. So a lot of people, when they start their Lambda function, they download files and cache them locally, but they never know when they should reload it. So the nice thing here is, don't worry about that. It'll always access the latest files. Data science packages. A lot of people try to run pandas and NumPy on Lambda, and it's extremely hard to squeeze that into the limited, 256 deployment package. So thank you. Lambda has a limited size that you can give zip files and all this to load into memory. And so this means you can now have things directly on disk and access them somehow. I don't know if you can import directly. Migrate legacy applications, partially updating files. Moving your directory and its contents within a file system in an atomic operation. So give that a go. Let's have a look at the pretty pictures. You create an EFS file system. What does it look like in Lambda? That's what I want to care about. You add a file system, add a trigger. Here's the Lambda bit. An Atlantic puffin. That's very nice. Okay, so confused. Show me how to do it. Let's just get a Lambda. The docs are not that bad. They have pretty pictures of pelicans and stuff. So if I go into a function, can I see where to mount anything? Oh, here's something that changed recently. The handler and language got moved into basic settings. That was a recent change. File system, here it is. So you can just come in here and say, add a file system, of which I have none, to this function. A VPC must be associated with a Lambda. Oh, that's interesting. A EFS, Elastic File System belongs to a VPC. The Lambda function must belong to the same VPC. It's the requirement. Because they communicate through the EFS endpoint within the VPC. That sort of makes sense, just like an EC2 instance. So there. Thank you for pointing that out to us, Jelly. Poor Noobs, pointing out that new feature, which is great. What else do we have here in the blog? That's EKS supports the Inferentia instances, which are great for inference compute. There's a new thing called Code Artifact that helps you manage your artifact repositories and package managers. Lots of developers are very happy with that. C5A instances are AMD, so you get about 10% lower price for the same performance. We've also got our Graviton instances that come out, which is using an ARM chipset. So you've got to recompile for that, but really great. Always good to read through the AWS blog, it seems. Fantastic. For those of you who have just joined, my name is John. We're having a look through AWS questions on Stack Overflow and any other random topics they might bring up. Talking of random topics, I saw this. Somebody pointed me to this. Dev null as a service. I'll put a link here for you. In modern days, everything is a service. You can create documents, blah, blah. That's why we're launching dev null to the cloud. This allows you to get the features. Erase all your data safely from anywhere in the world. 85% uptime. I run huge map, produce jobs. This is basically a joke saying dev null is the Linux way of saying just throw it away. So if you don't care about some output, you just redirect to dev null, and they'll allow you to do it here. And I like this. They've got pricing pages. If you want really high availability, you can pay, but it's pretty useless. And they're licensed under the University of Utah public license, the Oculus Rift license. You can get a job with them. A map enlarge engineer, a pipe redirection specialist who must like cats and like deleting the entire operating system. I see questions like that where people come along and say, I ran RMRF on my root directory. What do I do now? You get your resume in order. There's code. Redirect to, let's try that, to dev null as a service, and it is a blank page. Does it provide versioning? Oh yes, because you might want to get back your older version of dev null and get it back again. So thank you very much. Showing you that I can now delete it. Yay. Oh, another link I've got up here is our Stack Overflow room. I'll put this in chat. This is a room I've created on Stack Overflow where you can chat about things. Hello, everyone. So if you follow that link, you can join in a chat. This is for somebody's linking about things. Yes, somebody else. Chris, who is, I think, in the UK, a very good answerer, Chris Williams, has also linked about that Lambda function. So yet another place where you can chat with lots of AWS people, especially if you're doing Stack Overflow type things. So feel free to visit our Stack Overflow room and join the fun, answering lots of questions. Any other interesting discoveries you've had over the week? Oh, I should mention the AWS blog. You can go to this link. Is not just one blog. There's actually lots and lots of blogs. And not everything hits the top. So we could go in here and say, oh, I'm interested in containers. What's interesting? Robotics is always interesting. So ROS2, a new standard for production robot development. So lots of ROS is a robot operating system. AWS is helping contribute to ROS, and it's the standard thing. When you have robot arms, for example, to go out and grab something, that whole motion of a robot arm can be programmed in ROS, so it knows how to go out and do things. Hey, Sputnik, good to see you on board. Batch Simulator, lots of things. Okay, Remars is not on. Robots, we like robots. Got to prove you're a robot to get in. Okay, let's look at some questions. I also marked some questions earlier today. For me, by the way, it's Sydney. It is currently 11:42 a.m. on Wednesday morning. So I'm speaking to you possibly from your future, unless you're in Singapore, in which case I'm in your past. No, Singapore, that's too confusing for me. New Zealand was the first country in the world to experience Y2K. So if you look at the whole world and you look where the international dateline is. Zoom out, zoom out. Hello, Sydney. If we zoom out real big, we get to Google Earth. Here we are. Here's the international dateline where the day becomes the next day, 9:42 in Toronto. So on this side of the dateline, it is yesterday. Well, when it's yesterday, and on this side it's tomorrow. So New Zealand was the first country in the world, if you look at the international dateline, maybe bits of Russia, to hit 2000. What's up with that hook in the Indian Ocean? There's lots of small countries. These are Kiribati. These are the sort of islands where Survivor is filmed. And a lot of these countries like to align with like Fiji, New Caledonia, where they do it in Samoa, don't they? Where is Samoa? There we are. There is Samoa. They had to stop filming or something when Corona came in. And to make Samoa in the same time zone as New Zealand, because they do a lot of that, they sort of keep the New Zealand time zone. So that's why there's a lot of funny things going on in there. Who drew the dateline? Now, the other interesting thing about dateline is why did they put it here? And the answer is, if you look at the world, can I zoom out even more? I don't think so. Oh, I can go to the world. Here we are. My machine, the fan is spinning here. It's all 3D. So the nice thing here is you'll notice where the international dateline is, there's basically no countries. If you squeeze it between Alaska and Russia, there's no countries. So they could put the dateline. Wouldn't it be inconvenient if one side of your country was in Wednesday and the other side was in Thursday? So they put the dateline here. Now, the really interesting thing is if you go to the exact opposite side of the world, you'll see the United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom created all these time zone-y type things and the longitude and latitude. So if you pick the longitude of, where is it, the latitude of London, you'll notice it's effectively at 0. That long, latitude, longitude is effectively at 0. And that's because Greenwich is effectively at 0. So the Royal Greenwich Observatory was effectively 0 in terms of the longitude around the world. And that's why it's there. And that leads to an interesting thing called Antipode, which is a great website. Is it this one? So if I type in Sydney, so Sydney is on the exact opposite side of the world to almost Europe. Pretty neat. I was in New York one time. Not New York. I was in Washington, D.C. And the next week, they wanted me to go and teach a course in Perth. And if you look at the opposite side of the world to Washington, D.C. is effectively Perth, which is down here on that part. So they wanted me to fly to the other side of the world, which wasn't too good. And the other thing I mentioned is Google Maps is great, showing I one time flew from New York to Hong Kong. And if you look at that on the world, it looks like you fly across the USA, across the Pacific Ocean and go to Hong Kong. The reality is you fly across this route, the straight line route between the two, and you go almost across the North Pole and across Russia and you go down there. so it's a much shorter flight. Is it true I can randomly die to an animal at any given time you are outside? It's interesting you mentioned that. I don't know if I can find this. Yes, the latest news in Sydney is the University of New South Wales, where my son goes, except he's now doing classes from home. There are still some people on the campus, has a fox roaming around. I shall put this in the chat for you. And this fox is going around. People are feeding it chicken nuggets. And, oh, that's a pretty uninteresting news report. I gave it a pat and he chomped my hand. Don't pat foxes. Put it in chat. So students are feeding this fox, and here is the student trying to give fox. What's this got to do with Stack Overflow? I don't know, but we're having fun. Here is a fox on campus, middle of modern Sydney, eating a chicken nugget, and this kid wants to go and pat him, and what does the fox do? Crunch. Ah! So, how do we get onto this topic? I have no idea. Hello, I'm in Sydney. It's tomorrow, and the weather is pretty lousy. It's winter. Let's look for some questions that I can answer. How to solve error when send email in AWS? That's pretty, yeah. Dog hardware and cat software. What? So I normally go through lots of questions and I just look at the title to see if I'm interested. Oh, somebody has responded to one of my questions here. Let's get slightly distracted and see what somebody said to a question. This is something I answered recently. What's the question? EC2 1 gig of storage snapshot is being used quickly. So this person was concerned that their free usage tier that we looked at earlier is being consumed, and they are worried about paying for it. You shouldn't be too consumed. They were worried about the snapshot usage, and the snapshot usage is only, I think I gave it in my answer here, 5 cents per gig per month, and the free tier gives you 1 gig. So effectively we're giving you 5 cents free. Isn't that generous of us? So don't be too concerned. And they're coming back and saying, it was due to an AMI and a snapshot. So it's worth mentioning AMIs use snapshots underneath. So if you're trying to remove space, you can get rid of your AMIs and the snapshots at the same time. So that's an example of this little tray icon where people can come back, add comments, and I get notified when they come and do that. Redshift. This is something I think we might have covered before. When is it necessary to add permissions to an SNS topic? So Amazon SNS. Oops. On SNS. Our simple notification service. What is it? It's the ability to create a topic and send a message to that topic, and then users or applications can subscribe to that topic via SMS or email notification or things like that. And if you create, hello Sputnik, you create a topic in SNS, you can define an access policy. And the access policy normally says who can send messages to the topic, who can remove messages, etc. And the owner normally gets permission. You can also assign IAM permissions to give an application permission to send or read to the topic. Was it SQS? Am I going totally off topic here? SNS. SNS. Isn't SQS the first? Was SNS the first available service? SQS was first. And depending which blog post you read, the times are all mixed up now. It looks like SQS came out before EC2. So you couldn't even run a computer in the cloud, but you could run SQS. If you go to the AWS blog and you go way back to the beginning of time, you can actually find introducing SQS. There's some picture of Jeff Barr next to a swimming pool. Date. Boy, this all 23 pages. Powerful new SQS features. Nope, looks like it's sort of gone. But there's a picture of him sitting by a swimming pool explaining the benefits of using SQS. Kinesis is the first? No way, man. Kinesis is recent. ILMPARD, is there a way to get a name of an exported user? Okay, I'll come back to that. Let me just finish talking about SNS. So SNS allows you to have permissions. IAM can give permissions. However, as dictated here in the question, online reading suggested that an SNS topic must have an IAM policy attached to allow S3 to publish to it. Okay, so S3 can have an event that publishes to an SNS topic. How does S3 have permission to send to that thing? So it looks like they're trying to come up with a set of permissions for Lambda role. Here it is. So you can create a policy that allows S3. Let's see, SNS policy S3 event. Configuring S3 event notifications. Granting permissions to publish to an SNS topic or SQS queue. And you've got, here it is, yeah. So you're granting S3 permission to this particular topic from this particular bucket name. So it looks like that might be the answer they're looking for. What did the answer come here? Oh, they want to do it from the CLI. Okay, so IAM can do it. I don't know what's going on. I will just put a link back to this very handy topic. Granting permissions. So sometimes if I'm too lazy to answer a question, I'll just put a link in there and hope that that will help somebody. Hey Marcin, oh, you're in chat. Good to see you. Lots of questions I went to answer today. Marcin has already answered. Oops. Are you watching the stream? Sorry, that's off the bottom of the screen a bit there for you. Yep. Okay. We are getting distracted. Actually, I'll have a look at a few questions I marked earlier. So this is my Stack Overflow console where I can see my reputation going up. Be happy. Looks like I'm getting a badge for SSH when I answer another 6 questions on the topic. So, oh, and I import part. I forgot your question. Is there a way to get the name of an exported user in a Cloudformation template? Import value exported user is how we're using it. Just wondering if there's ways to convert the ARN to another value of that object. I'd have to see the template to see what you're trying to do there, but I know that Cloudformation. If you are creating a user in Cloudformation like IAM user, the tip I always like to give is scroll to the very bottom of the page. And there's a section where it talks about ref and get attribute. So if you refer to the user that was created, it will return the logical ID, which is the username. So it'll return the username. If you use function get attribute, you can retrieve the ARN. So if you are going to do a export of a user in Cloudformation, you could refer to either their username just by referring to the object, or you can use a get attribute and the ARN to get back that user. Then you could import value what you're using. Did that help? IAM Leopard. I understand your name now. That's quite good if you're really into IAM. Oh, that helped. Excellent, excellent. Also down here, look, I've got lots of job ads. And these are in Australian dollars. Australian dollar is running at, let's see, 1 AUD is equal to 68 cents US, or 1 USD is equal to $1.50 Australian. So when you see these job listings, they're sort of 30% lower than what you get in the USA. So they're saying I should be a software engineer based on the things that I've been answering in Stack Overflow. They should think I should be into DevOps and reliability engineering. Fantastic. Let's go to my bookmarks. We've answered that one. Oh, this was interesting. I'm using SDK to create and drop buckets for a test. So it looks like they're saying if a bucket doesn't exist, create a bucket. Fantastic. And they're getting an error. You have attempted to create more buckets than allowed. How many buckets can you create in S3? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hopefully lots of you were watching the AWS certification quiz show about an hour or two ago. 100. So it used to be that 100 was a hard limit, and now it is a soft limit. Yes, I think you can request an increase up to 1,000 buckets. Theoretically, you can do everything in one bucket, or at least one bucket per region. You don't really need to have lots and lots of buckets. So if you have an architecture where you say, I'm using one bucket per team, or one bucket per user, or one bucket per system, you might want to rethink, because one bucket can have as much as you want in it. But there can be some very good use cases like permissions and things where you might want to have more. I got more than 100 buckets in my account, but when I try to create in the console, I create it without any problems. When I create it manually and run my other tests, I can successfully put and delete content from the bucket. It isn't an issue. Quotas. Quotas. Let's talk quotas. This was recently added to the AWS console. I don't know if you've seen it. You can go in and say, what are your quotas for a particular service? So I can go in and say, S3. My quotas, access points, here are buckets, 100. And click on that, and it tells me I can request a quota increase. And I ask for 150 or something. And so normally I thought you've got a reason. You've got to tell them why you want something. Some things you don't get automatically. We'll check to see if you're really using the limit, or should you be getting this, you're not abusing the standard. That's what all the limits in the cloud platforms are all about. I used to use Salesforce. Salesforce, the same thing. Limits, because you've got shared systems. You don't want one person overriding the ability of other people to use the service. So correct, you can get 100 buckets. I already have more than 100 buckets, and I can keep creating them via the console. I just can't via this CLI. That's really interesting. They override the soft limit. That's interesting. You can create more in the console, but not through the CLI. I wonder if they're using the right account. I don't have an answer for that. That's interesting to know that they're having trouble through the SDK or through the console. I saw a little checking the SQS. There's Marcin checking out those questions, answering questions during the day. Fantastic. What other service quotas do we have here? So many services I've never seen here. Elemental Media Store, EventBridge, IoT. History. Looks like I've never asked for an increase in my quota. I'd let you know there's a different team in AWS called customer service. And when you put a request for a quota increase, it goes to the customer service team. You don't have to be subscribed to AWS support. Also, if you have a billing problem and you want to raise that, that goes to the customer service team. You do not need to be subscribed to AWS support. I, of course, always recommend that AWS support is very good for enterprises doing things. A few things to understand about the pricing. They've got this thing called Developer, which is a flat price, $29 a month, and you can raise as many tickets as you want. You have to do it via creating tickets or email. You can't do it via chat or phone calls, but it's a great way to get lots of help. It can take 24 hours to get a response onto there. If you're doing serious work on AWS, that's when you want business level support, which is a percentage of usage, and enterprise, which is a minimum of $15,000, but you get an assigned technical account manager who works with you, plus again, a percentage of your business. So you can always get developer support, and then you can hit up AWS support or just ask questions on Stack Overflow. Now, here is a question that I picked purely because of the title. Do you think this title is a good description? Let's see if we can fix this. I have an S3 bucket. I'm planning to use like Google Drive. I mean, how can I access my bucket directly through a web browser, navigate to its folder, download the files it has, upload the new folders and files, etc., with different users having different permissions to access the bucket? I don't want it to be accessible only by AWS console. I want it to be accessible via a web browser. Let me know if it's possible. 2 people have marked this as wanting to close. One person says it needs detail. Another one says it needs more focus, maybe because of all the likes and things. I edited a tag on here, but what I should do is try and improve the title. How to use Amazon S3 bucket through web browser, not console. They'll hopefully help people find that in future. So one thing I like using, I have a little program called CyberDuck. And where is CyberDuck made? Well, CyberDuck, sorry, it's so small. They've got very European sounding names here. Wow. So possibly from Europe somewhere. It used to be a Mac only program and is now available also for Windows. And you can come in here and you can give your S3 credentials. And you can simply provide your credentials. And here I have a list of all my buckets. Why does it give you in reverse order? So here's my various buckets. I don't mind you seeing my buckets. If I go to my S3 console, you can see a similar list of buckets. So do not delete hands-on recognition private. Do not delete hands-on recognition private. So it's going in and having a list of my buckets, and then I can go into there and I can go into that bucket as well. I've got a few buckets I use for doing Stack Overflow work. So I've got various cheese pictures in there, and you can see they're represented here as well. And it's just a matter of uploading and downloading. So let's see. I wanted to have a new one here. I've got my brain in there. Nope, I don't have my brain, so I will upload my brain to CyberDuck just by dropping it in there. It uploads to S3 because it knows all of the S3 protocols. It's not doing cheating, it's not mounting or whatever. And if I go back to my console view, we should see that my brain has been uploaded. Access denied. I'll go for that link. And so it's uploaded the file. So I really like using CyberDuck to upload, download, and do things. I've been answering a question for somebody about FTP. And they've got an FTP server and they're trying to figure out how to grant users access in multiple clients. And the answer is don't use FTP. Give them something like CyberDuck and they can just drag it and go up and down, etc. So let's give a bit of an answer here. Cyberduck.com, is that their website? Cyberduck.io. Where are these people located? Mountain Duck. Our Mountain Duck allows you to mount S3 as a drive. Not recommended, especially for production use, but you can do that. Oh, German. It looks like they're a German company. Oh, they speak lots of languages too. Wow. Okay. Let's do an answer. So it looks like they want to navigate folders like CyberDuck. Right. Isn't Elastic Fox similar? Oh, you've been around a while, porn noobs. Ah, Elastic Fox. Elastic Fox is different. Elastic Wolf, thank you. We're all thinking Fox at the moment. I used to have it installed. I don't think I have it on my machine. Oh, that's interesting. It's under the AWS page. Somebody else developed, and I think we brought it in, but I don't think it's being actively maintained. Latest version 2017. Elastic Wolf. If we look for some pictures of it, is probably the easiest way of doing it. Elastic Wolf was a replacement console. So it was a downloadable program where you could effectively replace the AWS console with an application and literally run it through a program. But yeah, who wants downloadable programs when you can do that these days from web browser pages type things? So it's pretty neat. Close lots of tabs. No one else chatting. There's my answer. Very good. Okay, we've been talking for an hour or so. Time to show you something else that I had here. It was really cute. Apparently this has been around a while. Somebody has created a map of computing architectures for AWS. I shall put this in the chat. And computing is a large, ever-growing field, making learning or keeping... Basically, this person has created a poster. And the poster, if I zoom in real small, has... It tries to put all AWS services in a sort of master grid. Here we've got internet, workplace. If I zoom out, it's a bit hard to see this thing really. So they're attempting to map every service and its relationship in some general flow. Move data, execute. Oh, so this is effectively compute. On the left, we've got execute and move. A bit weird. STS credentials, that doesn't fit. And just move, work links, VPCs. Okay, so that's sort of networking and communication. So if you ever want to show off to people and prove that you know everything about AWS, you can get the Mocha, the map of computing architectures for AWS, and you can buy it as a poster. Rather than getting a big screen, you can buy as a poster. I worked at AWS for 8 years as solutions architect, advising customers on their architecture. And my last count, I had 257 products. I wanted to build a mental model. So, a periodic table? Oh, okay, so he's claiming credit from people who've done things like RPM. Jaws with kitties. My co-workers would love it. So there you are. This is your Christmas present. You can buy them all. A map of AWS services, or at the very least a PDF. There is also a really good AWS network world map. We had a few of these really, really big posters in the office we had, which showed all of the networking around the world. And they're quite expensive posters. No, they were showing all of the global fiber connections. I think we sponsored and we got it. And it's really fascinating when you look at these maps of where the fiber runs around the world. Can it be big enough? Oh, this looks cute. How do I get it? Maybe we're back to our physical office by then. Yeah, all the fiber is pretty hard. I'm having to buy a new router at home. Network's going crazy. Gonna give me a map, or should I just give up? That's fascinating. In the old days, telegraph connections. Wow. The telegraph was amazing. They literally had to run cable underground and do that. There was a great article in Wired magazine a while ago. Wired magazine. Fiber cables. And I can't find it. But yes, a few questions up here. Setsaw, when is the next Reinvent happening? Well, I can certainly tell you Ren. And the when is after Thanksgiving. So end of November, beginning of December. We are currently saying it's Las Vegas, Nevada. As to, we are closely monitoring the COVID. Priority is health and safety. Reinvent is currently scheduled for Las Vegas. We'll provide updates closer to it. So we used to open booking earlier, and by now at least half the tickets for Reinvent are already sold. And now we're going, well, we're not too sure what's happening. What do you think? If Reinvent was on, would you even go? Last year it was 50,000 people crowded to the hilt. I suspect that even if we held it this time, we'd have less people from overseas, a few people a bit more conscious. So I'm really hoping that if they don't hold it in person, they'll do a really good online version. They publish the videos online pretty quickly. And I always like to plug this page that I do, which has all of the Reinvent sessions from last year available. You can watch them on YouTube. You can also connect to your favorite podcast reader to do it. Do they have it on Twitch? They might live stream it on Twitch as well. I went to TwitchCon in San Diego last year, so a year ago, and they streamed all of their sessions, and so they literally had each of the rooms listed here, and you could Twitch Sings. That was pretty fun. That was when people would do karaoke for their new channel. And I was at TwitchCon trying to get into some sessions, but the room was full. So those of us in the line outside waiting to get in would call up our mobile phone, hook into the Wi-Fi, and watch the Twitch session on the other side of the wall from us live of what's going on. So why do we go to a conference to watch it on the other side? I have no idea. I passed it last week. Passed the exam. Fantastic, Mushy. Yay. To practice exam shouldn't be too bad. So Twisted is saying, I've missed some conversation here, have I? Should I start with Cloud Practitioner and then some other certifications? Oh, I like talking about certifications because I used to be a trainer. And first thing I should always say is YouTube CQ. If you were watching online on the stream not long ago, we had our certification quiz show. And so each week we have a number of practice questions. You can hop online on various different topics. So certainly hop to AWS and watch our CQ show. Let me put that in a link. Also, we're going to link to certifications answering your questions. So, work. That didn't work either. Okay, I have to do it here. What an awful screen. So, has anyone done the machine learning certification? God, if you can do that machine learning certification, you're amazing. The gobbledygook in there. Do John Bonzo exams. John Bonzo exams. John Bonzo exams. On Udemy. There we are. Suggestion there to hop onto Udemy for $20. Oh, that's $20 Australian. It's probably even lower cost for you folks. You can hop on and do lots of practice tests. 390 questions. And some very good ratings there. Of course, shout out to Mastermind, who raided the stream a couple of weeks ago. Mastermind is Aaron Brooks, great guy out there, who is running an academy. I'll put a link to this in the chat. And he's running a free online boot camp via Twitch, and there's regular streams, and you hop in and do it. So I recommend you also hop in there. He's well admired by people. So quick explanation, the entry exam is Cloud Practitioner. If you are watching the AWS channel on Twitch, you can pass this exam. If I should tell you, we have a competition internally for staff who go and do it. And the competition isn't what mark will you get, it's what's the fastest you can do the exam and still get 100%. And so we have very experienced solutions architects who go and do it. And I think the record is currently 8 minutes. So they did the exam in 8 minutes and got 100%. And Tutorials Dojo says Sarukjuk Tomush. Try that, tutorialsdojo.com. Ooh, this looks good. AWS cheat sheets. I like that. I shall add it to my bookmark system. your one-stop learning portal for AWS and other related topics. So lots of resources out there to go and learn AWS. Great. So cloud practitioner, we then break into associate exams, which are based on job role. If you're a solutions architect, it's high level sort of how would you architect an AWS solution. Maybe you're more a hands-on person. You care about IOPS in EBS volumes and VPCs. That's a SysOps exam. And then you've got the developer, which is more people who want to code, with caching and DynamoDB and EFS, that sort of thing. So they cover a lot of the similar concepts, but they focus a bit differently. So solutions architect is more on well-architected type things. SysOps is more on the knobs and dials. How can you do it? And developers more on the DynamoDB. How would you call the services and use those services? Yes, out here we've got higher up we've got professional ones, solutions architect and DevOps. My recommendation on those is they're 3 hours long. Make sure you go to the bathroom before the exam. Lots of text to read. Like there's huge bits of questions and then answers. So if English is not your first language, you can request an extra half hour, I think, to get a longer exam just to make up for all the reading that's involved. Then we have specialty exams over here. Advanced networking, I failed. I did not read enough about Direct Connect. So I thought it was just VPC stuff, but no, it's more advanced. It's called advanced networking. Security covers a lot of different services. I hear good things about that. Machine learning is pretty tough. Alexa skill builder. If you're into building Alexa skills. Data analysis is the replacement for our big data exam, because now it's not just big data, it's a whole lot of different technologies. And database, so all your RDS and whatever databases. So try and get those. There are some people in the world who have all of those certification exams. So good luck to them. I have more expired exams than anything else. So I've done solutions architect, I've done SysOps, I've done developer, I've done the big data one, I failed networking, I've got the pro exams, but after a few years they expire, so I've got to recertify. I also help write some of the certification exams. If you are an AWS, let's see what we can do here. Education programs, partner training. Is there a link here? AWS SME workshop. Here we are. Join peers at AWS exam development workshops to help ensure the validity of our current and future certification program. So we invite lots of experts around AWS, but also you folks. You are a regular AWS practitioner and you have passed the exams. You can become a person who helps write the exams. We'll give you a free exam voucher. Isn't that great? You write exams and as a reward, we give you a free exam. You get to meet lots of people when it isn't COVID. I last did one in Atlanta. I've done San Francisco. I've done Herndon, Virginia. We might have some in Sydney soon. And you can help us write exam questions. The things about exam questions is they've got to test your knowledge. So do you know that Amazon Kinesis is used for streaming data? And all the other questions, the hard bit is writing the fake answers. They've got to be valid potential answers. We can't just make up things to give the fake answers. So the hard bit is coming up with the answers that are not quite correct. So if you're into that sort of thing, I highly suggest you request it. We're now doing them online as well, so you can participate online. What else have you been chatting about here? I have the Regional 5 and the Security Cert, Mr. Bob. Excellent. What's the most complicated exam? I personally would say machine learning, because machine learning is a complex topic, but it depends where your skills lie. The professionals can be hard. I think I did 2 professional exams on one day to recertify, and that was a long day. Okay, let's close Windows and return to whatever we were talking about. No one else in the chat room. Is there a way to upload photos from my EC2? This sounds a bit like CyberDuck. I'd like to upload a photo from my computer to EC2. To EC2. I know you can use S3 in the Boto 3 library. This does not suit me since the photos themselves should be on EC2, processed there, and downloading them using Python with S3 takes too much time. I want to upload and process photos on EC2, but downloading and update, you said that already. Did they repeat that? I want to upload, repeated yourself there. Paraminco. Picro, hello Picro, has suggested that they use, so Paraminco has an SSH client where you can programmatically SSH. I see a lot of people trying to, Kitty suggests SCP. I see a lot of people asking questions about Lambda functions to SSH into an EC2 instance. Like, no, SSH is for humans to log in. You should not write a Lambda function that logs into an EC2 instance to run commands. You should use Systems Manager or something like that. The patron has suggested SCP. Yeah, so SCP is a good way to copy from your machine to an EC2 instance. How do I do this in Python code? Okay, in that case, I think Paraminco has an SCP module. Oh, there's an SCP module in Python. Give them a link to that. SCP library for Python. Cool. Oh, recognition. I love Amazon recognition. Let's play with recognition. Recognition. So you may have noticed that recognition is spelt a little differently. It's spelt with a K. And that's because we bought a company that was called Recognition. And it probably helps them with their trademark names. And recognition, you may have seen recently, AWS has put out a press release saying they will not be, let me get the wording correct, AWS Day 1 blog. Day 1 blog is the Amazon blog. And we are implementing a 1-year moratorium on police use of recognition. Quite a few companies, IBM, Microsoft, I think Google, a lot of them are, with the recent happenings, they're saying we're going to wait until Congress has time to make rules and various things. I'm not sure how that applies to international countries as well, but some not great things are being used on recognition. But there are some really great use cases being used out there for recognition. Let's have a quick example. I can upload a picture here into recognition. I have a picture from Disney. These are people social distancing by wearing costumes at Disney. No, it's an old picture. And I can pass this up and it's highlighted as found persons. That's interesting. A toy. A toy Donald Duck. And it's looking at the picture as a whole and it says, oh, I'm 97% sure it's a theme park, amusement park, human, person, castle, footwear. Yeah, Minnie's wearing some big shoes, apparel, clothing, mascots. That's pretty good. So that's called object and scene detection. You can also do facial analysis. So let's see if I've got a picture here from the Genius Bar at Apple. Here's a couple of people. So they're saying this person looks like a face, appears to be male, 19 to 31. That person would thank you. Smiling, happy, wearing glasses. This person over here is 32 to 48 years old. He might complain. Appears to be male. Did that say appears to be male? Yeah, appears to be male. Not smiling. Yep. Not wearing glasses. Mouth is closed. It does not have a moustache, a beard, etc. So recognition can do facial analysis and a lot of fun things. You can also do celebrity recognition. Who is this famous celebrity who we did not have to pay money to use? And it turns out to be Mr. Jeff Bezos. And you've got all these great photos of Jess as he has the Terminator. as he has progressed over time. He's changed, but the idea with recognition is it should be able to track those changes in faces over time. Don't upload nude pictures. No, I'm not going to try the image moderation type thing. Text image, you can also find text in images. So it's not quite OCR, it's more like trying to get license plates or something. You ever heard of Mechanical Turk? Mechanical Turk is an Amazon service that allows humans to do the job of machines. And the idea is you can pass out work to humans. I think I've got an account already. Why is it not letting me log in? Login doesn't go there. But Mechanical Turk, I did some work one time where it had companies that had running photos. So jogger numbers. So imagine if you're going for a running race, and not really joggers, is it? People like this, where they're running a race and they have numbers on their chest, and the companies take photos and they want to sell those photos to the people. They have to get those numbers out of the photos to know who to email. And so on Mechanical Turk, they had all these photos, and you got paid like 2 cents for each photo where you typed in the number of the person who was the biggest, most featured person in that photo. They would then put them in their database and do it. But these days you could use recognition to pull it out, or some form of AI to do it. Is recognition powered by captures? That'd be great. You just have lots of captures and people doing things there. Capture was originally done to help. There's a version that will help you translate books that it scanned and it couldn't read. So you're quite right there. So this would be handy for pulling off numbers on running type jerseys. And I did a bit of playing around with recognition a while ago, and video star. You can read my findings on this blog. I've shown it once before. And what I did is I took a video. Actually, let me show you the videos. Here it is. This is a video that we had for the training and certification team, showing you why you should become an instructor with AWS. Really good idea. And here is me talking, my lovely orange shirt at the front of a classroom. Yes, I used to be a trainer. Here is Eddie, also a trainer. So we've got all these different, there's MJ. We've got all these different people in the training and certification. All these people I know. What are these different people doing? Oh, you didn't recognize me with that glasses. So I need glasses for close-up vision. I got laser surgery about 10 years ago, and yeah, I do look different, don't I? And I stopped wearing glasses. Fantastic. My shower, I suddenly realized, was very dirty because I could never see it when I had to wear glasses. When I got laser surgery, I didn't have to do it. And now I only have to wear for close-up, looking at screens, that sort of thing. In fact, talking of laser surgery, LASIK Quest blog, is it still up? LASIK Quest Sydney. One man's personal quest to undergo LASIK surgery. Here you are, put in the blog. This was me in 2006 when I got my laser eye surgery done. And the most amazing part, photos are still there, this thing. This is pretty ugly. Stay tuned. They actually connect you into, you are a Borg. When you get laser eye surgery, they have this thing that opens up your eye. This thing plugs into your face. You don't want to, they keep telling, don't move your eye, don't move your eye. And the surgeon is literally holding me down, and it slices a bit of my cornea out. They flip it up, and here's an ugly picture of that. They open your corner of your eye. They then laser your eye and then close it back again. And when they flip up that lid, everything goes blurry. It's the weirdest. They don't cut out, they cut your eye literally. The biggest cause of problems used to be the cutting of the eye. They used a thing called a micrometer or something, which would literally slice a tiny bit of the eye off. And they got better now that the laser does it. The laser goes in and bubbles bits of the eye slightly below the surface, and it creates a layer that you can then flip open and do it. It reminded me of, don't know if you've seen image 6th Day Arnie. There's an Arnie movie called The 6th Day where he gets his brain sort of downloaded, and it's that sort of thing. Anyway, I had laser eye surgery and it worked very well, but 10 years later, Oh, this was the Arnie movie. He meets himself as a clone. It's really good. Not many people know about The Sixth Day, but I think it was a pretty good movie. 10 years later, my eyes for reading have not gone as good, so I've got to use glasses. Oh, no, don't let me turn you off eye surgery. Even now outside, I don't wear glasses. It is fantastic. When it rains, you don't have to cover up your glasses. It's well worth getting laser eye surgery. Anyway, I was talking about these videos, and what I did with the videos is I used recognition streaming, which could detect things in the video, and it went and allowed me to say, hey, extract all bits of that video that were just Eddie. So these are all that you see jumping around a bit. It's detecting his face in every scene and splicing together a new version of the video just with his face, which is pretty neat. Let's do an MJ. It's MJ chatting about training, and you can see a slight jump there because it jumped to a different scene. Could be something walking down a corridor. Oh no, that's the MJ's. Well, let's do mine. No camera. Oh, look at my hair. I need a haircut. Jumping around a bit, jump to my classroom training. So this is all powered by recognition. It detected my face in every scene. And look, it's got the old logos in the background. So recognition is pretty neat. Why are we talking about recognition? There was a question. From where does Amazon Recognition get its face images database? I know it doesn't fit a technical question. Out of curiosity, where does recognition get its faces from? You ever see that film Face Off, where they sliced, or Mission Impossible? From a particular database they can use instead of recognition. And somebody says, you supply the faces. Celebrities, they select the faces. Recognition face doesn't actually contain any actual images of faces. It contains vectors and features derived from the images of faces. Very correct. If we go back to that facial analysis, it picks up where the nose and mouth are. It doesn't store the image. It just remembers the distance between faces, facial features. With COVID, a lot of people wearing masks, it has impacted facial recognition, so it's not easy to do that. Apparently, Apple released a change to their phones where if you log in with your face, it takes a bit longer to reject the login because it can't recognize your face. And so they're built in mask detection. So if you're wearing a mask, it immediately goes and asks for the PIN number, the 6-digit code, rather than using facial recognition, which is pretty neat. Nicholas Travolta. Was it Nick Cage and John Travolta in that movie? IMDb Face Off. Any of you ever use IMDb? IMDb is a great place to find out information about movies, and it is an Amazon company. If you have lots of information about movies, Travolta, Cage, you're right. If you have lots of information about movies, it makes it easier to sell movies. Also, if you watch Amazon Prime Video, if you stop Prime Video, you can call up X-Ray, I think it's called, and it can tell you about the characters in the scene. And when it tells you about characters, it pulls their information from IMDb. So it's a whole ecosystem that's going in there. I'm personally watching Westworld Season 3 at the moment, which is looking really good, but looking pretty weird at the moment. Where does Amazon get its faces from? That is leading itself to open to so much humor, but I think I will just upvote Jarmod for doing such a good answer there. Okay, we're getting distracted. Let me distract you some more. Do you like games? You like games? I've been staying at home a bit lately, and I've been playing on Board Game Arena. Board Game Arena has some free games on there. You can get more if you subscribe. One of my favorite games that I'm playing is something called Can't Stop. Any of you, oops, I don't want to start that yet. Can't Stop is a game of chance, and the best way to describe it is probably to watch somebody else playing. There's currently 140 games of Can't Stop playing. Really simple game, but really clever. Up a bit. So here's the idea of this game. I'm allowed to talk about games on Twitch, aren't I? It's a grid, numbers from 2 to 12. The game rolls 4 dice. You have to separate the dice into 2 pairs, which it is doing for you automatically out here. So a 1, 2, 2, 3 can be a 2, 3 or a 1, 2 or a 1, 3 or a 2, 3. And you can then select one of those sets of dice combinations. Games on Twitch, oh no. And you move up this ranking. And if you're a little bit smart and you look at what are the odds of things coming up, 7s will come up much more often than 12s, etc. So the idea is that 12s, you only need 3 12s on the side here to move up, whereas 7s, you need a whole heap of them to move up the middle. So it's a matter, it's like a game of chicken. How long will you keep going before you might roll a combination that doesn't quite do it? So this person was going up. The idea is to finish 3 columns. So they went up to 4. They thought they were doing enough, so they said stop, and it saves where it is. If you keep going and you don't roll the correct combinations, then it fails. And you can have 3. This person did that. They picked 3 numbers, which were 3, 4, and 7, and they rolled the dice, and they didn't match 3, 4, and 7 and go up. I'm not doing a good explanation of this game, am I? But it's a really, really good game, and I would highly recommend Can't Stop on Board Game Arena. And if you're going to get seriously into it, I would also recommend a touch of strategy. Can't Stop. Here's my link for you. This is a recommended strategy to try and go well. You can't guarantee because it's so random. And it basically gives you a way of doing a rule of thumb to say when you should stop in the game, when you should continue. But what I love is that this was written 22 years ago, based on an original version written 34 years ago. So this is a really old game, but it's extremely popular on Board Game Arena, 140 real-time games going on at this moment, and the games only last less than 10 minutes. So really, really good. And push your luck. Give it a go. Send me a free subscription for Board Game Arena. Oh, they're very good, actually. Board Game Arena has... this is Australian dollars, $40 Australian, probably lower in your particular country. $30 maybe. Cool. Okay, let's try a few more questions before we finish up. Lambda, let's go to some live questions, see if anyone's asked any questions while we've been talking. Elastic IP, Spark, pools. A problem with Cloudformation. I've tried to use code from GitHub. I always get the same unhealthy bad gateway on target group. Marcin, you got in before me. Okay, I'm not going to debug somebody else's code. How to solve an error when sending email. It's worth mentioning, I'm not going to answer the question, but port 25 on EC2 is blocked or throttled. So we don't want people spinning up EC2 instances and spamming the world, and SMTP normally works on port 25. So if you are trying to send email from an EC2 instance on port 25, you'll find it probably doesn't work too well. The other port number, I think it's 487 or something, can work a bit better when sending it. Or you can use Amazon SES. And in Amazon SES, you start in a sandbox mode and you have to verify an email address, and you can then start testing it. And once you've finished your testing, you can request that you go into production mode out of sandbox mode, and you can then start sending emails. But I did see somebody on Stack Overflow recently say they requested production mode and they were denied. It's just a simple application which had to send occasional emails to users. The answer was just point to your normal SMTP server or Gmail or something like that. You don't need a heavy-duty mailing system on Amazon SES for that level of code. But if you're doing serious mailing, SES is all about improving the deliverability score and reducing the spam that comes from emails. Forget the VM. Copy S3 partitions. No, I'll go to a pre-made one. Lambda to other endpoints. Is this the one I answered? Yes. This was a bit of a confused Stack Overflow poster who was trying to copy files on S3. So they had an earlier question. Rafael Titus. And their earlier question you can almost see the progression of their coding. First of all, they wanted to move files between buckets. Then they wanted to transfer through Lambda. Then they wanted to trim file names and removing characters in Python. So their earlier requirement, which was marked as a duplicate question. So if somebody asks a question that is very similar to another one that can be closed as a duplicate, Twitch is owned by Amazon. We're not sure about the board game. No, the board game website is not owned by Amazon. I just wanted to give it a plug because I have enjoyed playing it. So here they've said they want to copy files from one bucket to another bucket. And Harishta gave some simple code saying, hey, here's how you do it in Boto. You just try and copy the code. Then the question was closed and it had a sample source code here. And you can see for object in buckets filter, blah, blah, blah. So there was the code. And then if we go to the most recent version of the question, they literally copied that code out of that question and said, it isn't working, fix it. So we'd like you to try yourself to solve your own problems here. But the interesting thing was, you'll notice this is now a Lambda event. So I asked them a question, are you trying to trigger this as a Lambda function? Yes, it's an S3 Lambda trigger. When Lambda gets triggered on S3, it gets triggered for one object at a time. And yet here in their code, they're trying to loop through a certain prefix and copy code, which was not what they really wanted. And the final solution that I gave yesterday was very simple. It's just an event handler that fires. It extracts the bucket and key. By the way, if you're ever doing this, sometimes the key can have some funny characters in it due to HTML encoding, so you can use URL lib to decode it. So it's just a matter of getting the file that was created and saying, I want to send it to these target things with a copy command. So often on Stack Overflow, people ask for something, but it's really better to find out what is their actual goal. Their goal was, whenever someone uploads a file, please copy it over there. But they didn't ask that. They asked, how do I get this function going? How do I get that function going? I think it's called the XY problem. XY problem. The XY problem is a communication problem encountered in a help desk and similar situations in which the real issue, X, of the person asking for help is obscured because instead of asking directly about X, they ask how to solve a secondary issue, Y, which they believe will allow them to resolve X. However, resolving Y does not resolve X and is a poor way to resolve it, and the obscuring, etc. So often it's a matter of asking what they actually want. A friend of mine at a previous job, he made me a sign that simply said Y. So someone would come up to me and go, Kitty's is guilty. Someone would go up to me and say, I need a database to store this data. And I go, why? And they go, oh, because we have to collect this information. I go, why? Because we're going to do a marketing campaign. And I go, we've already got that data in our marketing system and we didn't have to build the database for them anyway. So asking why is good. What's the Japanese thing? I think it's called the 5 Whys. Japanese high quality manufacturing was always improved by using the 5 Whys. The bumper bar is falling off. Do you call it bumper bar? Whatever, off a car. Something's falling off my car. Why? Because the screw wasn't put in too good. Why? Because it wasn't wound all the whole way. Why? Because the person who had to fit it in didn't have enough space to turn the screwdriver, so then you turned it part of the way. Why? Because we did this operation before that operation, so if we just swapped the order of operation, there'd be room and we could screw it in correctly. So once you ask why 5 times, I have a Wi-Fi issue. I need to reset my account password cap. I thought that's a joke on the 5 Whys or the Wi-Fi issue. But I need to reset my general account password. Okay. Had we finished that? I think we'd finished that. One more and call it a day. What's the fastest way to... this one. I'll finish with this one. This fella's been taking a lot of my time lately. Joking about Wi-Fi, XY, Wi-Fi. So this person, I really like this one. What's the fastest way to copy files between 2 volumes in Linux in AWS? I've got 2.5 terabytes of data. You realize how big a terabyte is? Like, I used to have floppy disks that were a megabyte, and a gig is 1,000 of them, and a terabyte is 1,000 of them. A terabyte's a lot of... The fact you can go down to the store to Best Buy or whatever and pay less than $100 and get a terabyte disk doesn't mean a terabyte is small. I've got 2.5 terabytes in a 4 terabyte volume that needs to be copied to a 3 terabyte volume. The IOPS is high. Amazon EBS volumes, the larger the volume, the more IOPS you get given up to a certain limit. So the transfer speed should be fast. Since these are database files, we need to maintain file integrity, permissions, timestamps, etc. I'll just put a link to this one in chat. Everyone recommends rsync, but says it's slow. Is there a faster method to copy while keeping the data integrity in check? Notice I said data instead of data. Also, is there a way to, say, create an internal image of this volume and upload it to S3 and download it to another volume? You don't want to do that. The volumes are attached to the same machine. And I asked, is it a one-off? And they said it takes copying 3 terabyte takes 5 days. So this seemed a bit extreme to me. Like on the same machine, copying a few terabytes should not take 5 days. So what did I do? I first of all said, hey, if you want to make an exact copy of a volume, you can take a snapshot of that AWS volume, create another volume from it, and it's fine. And it doesn't take any time because it all happens in the background. And they said, nope, I need to copy it to the smaller 3 terabyte volume. So then I did more and I submitted another answer. You can give multiple answers on Stack Overflow. So I created a Amazon EC2 instance. I don't think the size is that important for throughput to EBS, but I chose a T2 large because I didn't need a lot of compute. Gave it a 4 terabyte volume, a 3 terabyte volume. And I populated 2.5 terabytes of files. That takes a long time. It takes about 88 seconds to write out a gig of random data to disk. And so overnight, I created 2.6 terabytes of data. My automated stopinator, you may have heard me talk about, then decided to terminate my instance that night, and I lost it all. So I had to rebuild it the next day. But I successfully managed to get 2.6 terabytes. I set it copying overnight. And unfortunately, the official timing disappeared because my session disconnected. But I got a speed of about 1 terabyte over an 8-hour period. So 2.5 terabytes should only take a day or so. So I don't know where they got the 5-day period. But I had a lot of fun creating random files, sort of 10 gigabyte in size. Let's see if I can show you some of that. EC2 instances. Yeah. What did you use to track the transfer speed? So I simply used the time command. Connect into it here. So in Linux, you can use the time. So if I say time sleep for 5, which causes it to sleep for 5 seconds, then it comes back and says that thing ran for 5 seconds. So I did a big copy and set it running with the time command and redirected my output to a file. Unfortunately, it redirected the output of the copy process, but not the time command. So I managed to reconstitute it by looking at some timestamps that are on my files. So here is my machine, which had about 2.5 terabytes of input files, and I copied it to the output volume for 2.5 terabytes. And I did fancy things like populated. Commands here. Why isn't there? I had all of these for loops saying for I in sort of 1 to 100, and then I used DD commands and all that to copy lots of files. And D40. Here I have lots of 1 gig files and lots of 10 gig files, and then I duplicated them into another directory to make them twice as big, and then I copied it all across, and they all contain random data I got from dev_random. Lots of big files there. So that was fun, copying things across, but it did not take 5 hours to do. And I personally would use snapshots again in future. So here is the speed. The speed doesn't quite make sense. If I'm transferring that many bytes per second, that means this many K, this many meg per second, which means it'd be that much per minute and that much per hour. So that's suggesting 400 gig an hour, which is not correct. I could do a gig in about a minute when writing to disk, so it should be more like 50 gig an hour or something. Oh well. Yes, I should have used nload or some other utility that actually tells me that I just ran a copy command. I ran an rsync command because he wanted all the file names to be exactly the same. That was lots of fun. Cool. So that's been a couple of hours. So thank you for hanging out with me. One thing I would like to do is encourage you to answer questions on Stack Overflow. Hopefully you've seen that it's a great place to learn things. It's pretty easy to contribute answers on there. Please do join us in that Stack Overflow room. I'll put another link to that room. Just pop through and say hi sometime. And it's pretty neat. LNR. Hello, LNR. I haven't seen you around before. This week I moved 12 terabytes from Mongo to S3. Completely different. It's fun to do. Are you saying that it took a whole week to move that much data? How did you move 1.2 terabytes? Oh, was it already in AWS? You just had to copy it across to S3. Laird. Thanks for teaching, John, for the information. My pleasure. Twisted Seed. Thank you. Good to have you there. Thanks for all your work, Jelly and Co. Answering questions online. I appreciate it. And I'll see you next week for the... we're not doing the certification quiz show next week, but I think I'll still do my stream. Thanks very much. And I need a tagline. What tagline should I use at the end of the show? Keep on answering? Something like that. LNR says, yep, already in AWS. I needed an S3. It was making a database upgrades. Cool. How long did it take you to transfer 1.2 terabytes of data to S3? Should have been pretty big. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye.